Coming up next on This Week in Cause, we'll explore cyberbullying, Tony Danza shows students who's the boss, and we'll feature an interview with Arabella Santiago from Just Good TV. Welcome to episode 12 of This Week in Cause. My name is Christina Gagne, and as always, I am joined by my charming co-host, Jonathan Harris.
It's great to be here again with you, Christina. How are you doing?
Good. We have some exciting headlines today, so let's jump right in. Our first headline has to do with the Supreme Court case, Snyder versus Phelps. For those of you that might not be abreast of what's going on in this case deals with hate speech through the Westboro Baptist Church. Through military funerals, there was a series of protests that went on saying that the men that in service that had died while in active duty, that their deaths were due to homosexuality in America. And so during these funeral services and other activities, which we normally associate as private activities, mourning the death of a family member, these protests were going on outside of these services. This case has made its way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court right now is grappling with issues concerning the First Amendment and whether or not the behavior of these protesters falls within the protections of the First Amendment.
Right. So, I think we can all agree that, even I saw Bill O'Reilly and Glenn Beck discussing this the other day. Even they were agreeing that this is abhorrent. What kind of a person do you have to be to go to someone's funeral and, hold up signs that they deserved it, say thank God for IEDs, God hates fags, all these horrific things. And you're going to have to get into a little bit of the mucky law stuff with me, because my initial reaction when I see this is, well, these people are being real jerks, but it's not illegal to be a jerk, and don't they have the right to peaceably assemble and speak their minds? I think the answer is yes, but are they breaking some other law, like inciting people to violence, disturbing the peace? Are there gray areas to this, or is it straight up freedom of speech? They have the right to be there.
Well, in some senses, they do have the right to be there, and in the sense if they're peaceably assembling, then the First Amendment will probably protect them. What this can come down to is, one, are there other statutes in the jurisdiction that they might be violating, for example? So are they crossing over property boundaries? Are they doing things that actually violate the law? That's separate from a First Amendment issue. Second to that is this idea that they could be inciting violence. Now, they're protesting outside of funeral services, but you're really aggravating a group of people, or they might have aggravated, not aggregated, a group of people during a very, trying time for many people. So are they going to incite violence? It goes back to the old idea of, you're yelling fire in a crowded theater, or you're using fighting words. That's like a very famous First Amendment description of behavior that falls outside of the First Amendment. I think in this case, and there's a lot of cases like this, the Ku Klux Klan, there's been famous court cases with that organization and other organizations where many people consider the organization contemptible. They consider the message to be abhorrent, but does the organization or do the people have a right to their First Amendment protections to say what they're saying? And I think that's what the case is going to come down to. I think in this particular case, it's hate speech, and hate speech is a very popular issue. Several episodes ago, we were talking about how in the Muslim community, we're seeing a rise of hate speech and hate crimes, especially when we talked about the 9/11 mosque. And so I think that the topic of hate speech, especially in this case, because it has to do with gay rights, and we're talking about cyberbullying and the gay teen suicides that have happened over the last couple of weeks. It's a very hot issue, and so the court, though, isn't supposed to look at sort of like the social context and is it a hot issue, but does the First Amendment protect people to say what they want to say, even if the message isn't something that the listener wants to hear?
So you think that the court is going to come back with a ruling that upholds the First Amendment rights for the Westboro Baptist Church?
I'd have to look at the case a little more closely in giving you my lawyerly response.
You're not, you haven't read all the briefings fully? You're not completely?
No, I haven't. And I think much to my clients' pleasing, I haven't gone through and spent all my time on this case because it's not mine. But, we do have a tradition in this country, and I think on this show, we a lot of times talk about, people taking positions on things, and they might not be positions we agree with. We bring light to circumstances where a group might be experiencing some sort of prejudice. In this case, this is a horrible situation. You just mentioned Glenn Beck and Bill O'Reilly even thought the situation was bad, which, they're the ultimate barometer that if they're saying it's bad, it's got to be.
If Glenn Beck is like, Fred Phelps is a horrendous person.
Yes.
He must be a really
Yes.
horrendous person.
But at the same time, it's, with any group. I mean, we support a lot of causes on this show, and, there's extreme pockets of every single cause that might say something or might do something that offends people. And so, if we protect free speech, it's free speech for everybody. It's not just free speech for a particular group. And so I think this case will just be interesting because it's been several years since there's been a big First Amendment case like this.
Yeah, and now one more question about this. Do you think there's going to be a backlash from the LGBT community? First of all, that they've been kind of screwed over the last year and a half or so. Since Obama got elected, they thought, things were going to get a lot better and that the gay rights movement was going to go full throttle. But then, of course, in California, Prop 8 passed. Don't ask, don't tell is still, for now, the law of the land. A lot of these cyberbullying issues, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, have come up. And now that a group that goes around with signs that say God hates fags is going to be able to keep doing what they're doing. What does this mean, do you think, for the gay, I don't want to say the gay agenda, because that's what other people say. I mean, for the gay rights movement is
okay.
what I meant. Yeah.
I think this issue, besides the content of the speech, is separate from the rest of the issue. Now, I think that the Proposition 8 issues and the other measures that have been brought up across the country, I think the cyberbullying issues, I think those are all tied together, sort of a general societal, transition right now between, whether we're going to accept, gay rights and are we going to give them some sort of legal standing and legal designation versus this case, which is basically, it's a free speech issue. And if it was, the We Hate Puppies group, I mean, if it was something that, was just as bad, but like focused at another group, like if it was something that had to do with like racial slurs or we could think of a panoply of like horrible things people could be saying to people. I think this is really a free speech thing. It just happens to concern this group. I don't think it's part of this total, and I don't think a Supreme Court decision in favor of First Amendment protection should even be seen as, an anti-gay rights decision. It should be seen as the First Amendment, and especially, we've had this conversation for the last 10 years in the wake of 9/11 and sort of the freedoms that, we have to give up, or the freedoms we should retain. The First Amendment is one of those things that if you have a conversation with anybody, most people are like, that's a good thing. We want that to be upheld. I want the right to be able to speak when, I might have something to say. So I think this is a wholly separate issue. But sort of turning the corner now to our second headline, which is cyberbullying, I think this is, integral to what's going on in the gay community and what's going on nationwide. I think a lot of young people, and just to sort of fill our viewers in, there have been now, I think, 4 or 5 incidents in the last 3 weeks of gay teen suicides, all of them related to instances whether in their personal life they've been cyberbullied or bullied at school. The most recent suicide had to do with an Oklahoma youth who, very sensitive kid, obviously had endured some types of bullying, went to a city council meeting and was a part of this conversation about, gays shouldn't be accepted in the community. And then probably most famously, just because of the cyber element to it, the student at Rutgers University whose roommate basically broadcast a sexual encounter with another student or somebody else, and he was very embarrassed and committed suicide. This is a big problem, and I don't think we've seen teen suicide generally ever get this sort of a spotlight. Nonetheless, gay teen suicide.
Right, and this brings up an interesting point that I wanted to make, because there was an article on ABC News about Tyler Clementi, who was the Rutgers University student. And it seemed to bring up that cyberbullying causing suicides might itself be an epidemic. And we've used the word epidemic a lot when we're talking about these teen suicides as they relate to cyberbullying. And I don't know who's doing the research on this, but my feeling is that the numbers of the percentage of teens committing suicide is not actually going up, but we're seeing, because it's happening in such a public way these days, because of the influence the internet is having on it. I think what it has brought out, however, is many campaigns have started over the last few years, and we're going to talk about a few in just a minute, that are working to help teens get through tough times. The focus is mostly on gay teens, and Ellen had a spot last week during her show where she was speaking out to gay youth who might feel like they can't come out and be themselves. But still, there are several online campaigns right now, and you can go to athinline.org, which is MTV's anti-cyberbullying campaign. And it's got several things here directed at teens. Get the facts. In fact, when you go onto this site, it doesn't have it anymore. When you go onto this site, it'll say, "Are you a guy or a girl?" And it'll give you, a quiz. So, if you receive this text from a friend, you should A, B, or C. It talks about sexting, and it has, little contests and things. There's also, and you probably want to talk about this, the Trevor Project, which it's I believe the first 24-hour hotline dedicated entirely to LGBT youth. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Essentially, the Trevor Project, and I don't know if you guys have seen these videos, they've been all over the internet, but the It Gets Better videos, many celebrities have, made these videos that basically talk about how it gets better, whether they're celebrities who, were gay in high school, or maybe they discovered that they were closeted gays in high school, but they're basically saying, it does get better. And some of them are just talking about their own high school experience. High school is a really shitty time, for lack of a better. For a lot of people, it's just very tough. You're transitioning in your life. And so the gist of the video is that just hang in there, and especially when you go to college. I think for a lot of young people, especially people that maybe live in isolated communities where there isn't a lot of diversity, they really think that that's it. And, I don't know if anyone watches the show Glee, but kind of like that Ohio high school town where, you're not going anywhere and just kind of stuck there. There's a lot of kids that feel like that across the country, that they don't have anywhere to go and they have nobody to talk to. So It Just Gets Better videos, I think, are a great way for kids who are very impressionable and celebrities just telling them to hang in there. One video that I thought was very powerful was Chaz Bono did a video, and she talked about how as she was a teen and sort of her whole adult transition as well. So I think that those are powerful things. But this falls into the larger discussion about cyberbullying. I think that, you and I were around and in school before, people had cell phones. They could be texting things, and so maybe you might get pushed or someone might start a rumor about you, but it stayed at school for the day. No one seems to realize, or this isn't really being emphasized, these kids are going home and they can't really escape anymore.
Right.
You used to be able to go, if you were picked on when you were younger, you used to be able to go home and be like, all right, I'm done for the day. Now you really can't go home and be done for the day.
Well, and, there are a few different issues here because, we've all seen those shows, or we've had those stories happen to us where one rumor gets around and then all of a sudden you'd go home and be like, but Mom, everybody knows. But
yeah.
Now with Facebook and the internet, everyone really does know. So there's, I don't know how to put this, because life in high school is shitty, and now let's be clear, life still sucks.
Yeah.
So it does get better, but for all you kids out there watching, it does still suck. But to take it a step further, parents around the country, everyone is wondering, well, what can we do to make all these teens happier? How can we all get through this together? And I think, it is just a struggle. Being a young person, growing up, going through adolescence, kind of sucks in general. And we have to deal with it, but now everything is becoming so public. It's so out in the open. And so how do we deal with that, and how do we make an effort to educate young people? Because you can't protect them anymore.
No.
If you're a parent and you think that you can, I can punish them and keep them on Facebook or whatever, no, you can't do that.
I think it has to become part of the education system. I was at a cybercrime summit a couple weeks ago, and it sort of amazed me how clueless, and this is not a slam at teachers at all. There's a lot of teachers that are on Facebook and that are very tech savvy, but there's a lot of teachers that don't know how to use that. So if you have a 6 or 7-year-old talking about, apparently there's a social network called Club Penguin.
Yeah.
So it's for little kids.
Yeah.
But they don't know what that is, or even in high school they don't know what Facebook is. And so if someone asks is this inappropriate, or what should I do? What are the good rules for me in using these social networks? There's not any guidance, and a lot of parents are equally as clueless about this stuff. I think with these networks, we have to wind this into education and teach responsibility. They're not a vehicle for you to be able to do whatever you want. You're not a celebrity by, slamming someone else on the internet, but we have a larger culture that says you are. If you do something extreme on the internet, then you're automatically a mini celebrity. I think that mentality is carrying over into the classroom and carrying over, into these students' lives. I think the Tyler Clementi example is paramount. Essentially, he was having an intimate moment, and I'm sorry, anyone who's gone to college, things happen in college. You know, you don't expect that your intimate moments with people or what you're doing in your dorm room is going to be broadcast like nationwide. And so, or even just webcast, you know, over instant messenger, which is what happened in this case. I think we just need to recognize that there is some sensitivity out there, and a lot of these teens, it is too much for them. I mean, if you feel different and you feel the type of different where, you know, we just discussed this in our last headline, you know, the gay rights movement, gay rights are, some people think they're very much in jeopardy, and some people think that we're slowly moving in a positive direction. If you're a teen in the middle of nowhere and you have no one else in your community that's gay, you might feel absolutely hopeless. And so I hope for any teens that might be watching this, or anyone who knows a teen that might be going through these issues, I think the Trevor Project's a wonderful resource. I also think going to mtv.com, who's really trying to make an effort to teach about, I mean, really being a digital citizen and respecting other people.
Yeah, it's been one of their big causes the last few years. And I want to make one other point before we move on. You know, people online, and anyone who's ever read some comments on YouTube knows this, people will say things online that they would never say in person. So if you think you got, you know, if you were a kid and you got bullied bad at school, people will say things to you online that even the worst of people would never say in person. And so it's very hard for people like us, and of course we're the last generation to grow up without these influences. So even for us, it must be kind of hard to understand precisely how much of a emotional toll it can take on you to have not only people saying and doing horrendous things to you that they wouldn't even do when we were in high school, but having it broadcast everywhere. So I would take a step back from saying that cyberbullying is an epidemic that's going to see teen suicide numbers skyrocket, but I think it's something that parents and educators have to become more aware of as we become even more technologically savvy.
No, certainly, and I think that, you know, some people use Facebook, and you know who's who on Facebook, but, you know, there's a veil of anonymity, and when people are anonymous, they tend, I mean, if you look at comments on a YouTube video, we'll be showing more YouTube videos later in the show, people are damn just nasty.
Yeah.
Because they know they can be, and so I think that, you know, once again, we want to identify the Trevor Project and visit mtv.com, and I do encourage you to watch any of those videos that have come out from different celebrities. Some of them are really funny, and some of them are very heartwarming, and I think inspirational.
Yeah, and the website, by the way, is thetrevorproject.org. If you wanted to go to that, and the MTV one is at thinline.org.
Well, speaking of our headlines and speaking of young people, you know, we don't have a cause watch today, but I'm sure next week we'll come up with something, since corporate America tends to step in it very often when it comes to corporate social responsibility.
We can just bash a company if you want
We
today.
just pick one. Let's look around the room and see what company we see on different things.
Staples.
Staples.
Assholes. All right, so moving on.
But an article came out yesterday, maybe it was the day before, and it was talking about the millennial generation. And I think that, you know, our last headline really dealt with a generation in between, maybe not millennials, but essentially there's a TechCrunch article by Paul Carr. I don't know if we can bring it up so people can go ahead and read it. The title was Generation Y, Why I'm Relieved Not to Be a Millennial. Just by way of background, Paul Carr is not even that old. It's not like, you know, many authors, like there's a couple New York Times columnists who are in their 50s who continually gripe about the millennial generation. Paul's not that far out of it. The gist of the article is basically millennials are whiners and they're lazy and blah, 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 blah. I just think that this does need to be tackled. I know that I saw in the comment roll a couple famous millennials who are researchers and involved in the millennial advocacy movement generally. You know, we're like, oh, don't react to this. This is a bunch of crap. But I think that, you know, we talk about a lot of issues on This Week in Cause, and I think there definitely are, you know, some generational tensions that are going on. I think they come out from time to time. And as someone who used to work at a national millennial advocacy organization, mobilize.org, I find it odd that I must be the anomaly of millennials. Either that or I am like a great case study for homophily in terms of what I do. But it just makes no sense that everyone I know that's millennial is very self-sufficient. You know, if they get knocked down, they bring themselves back up again, like work really hard, like they don't feel entitled. So I'm wondering where these millennials are.
You're not the minority. And according to this article, anyone who was born between 1980 and 1993, which would include both of us, would be a millennial. So right now, anyone between 17 and 30 are a bunch of lazy asses. And I think this is the same thing that happens in every generation. You know, the generation that was in their 30s and 40s in the 50s and 60s made all young people were beatniks and hippies and didn't do anything. So of course every generation, and I'm not saying all beatniks and hippies were like that either, every generation has some people who work really hard, some people who are kind of layabouts, and you'll pick the stereotypes. The older generation will pick the stereotype to go after. So both of us, obviously, we each work. You work more than I do these days, but we each work 50, 60 hours a week. You work more than that. And especially here in LA, I mean, I've worked at several startup internet companies the last few years. I've seen us as a group of people who was very ambitious. We're told we could do anything we want. We could, be an astronaut. All of our youth, we had those. The more you know, like you can do anything if you set your mind to it. Commercial. So we are a very ambitious and confident bunch, or else everyone else is. I'm not, but we're a very confident bunch. So we have these high ambitions, and so we're working very hard. And it is disconcerting not to see a payoff right away. So what Paul Carr does in his article here is says, well, the millennials I've talked to said that they will quit their job every year or two if they don't get where they're going, so they can move on.
I think that's preposterous because most millennials I know, and let's just think about the economic realities. Many millennials that graduated from college in the last 3 years are glad to have a job because they can't find one. They have no work experience, and so they go to internships that are unpaid. And I know a lot of young people that just graduated from college that have an internship and then they go work at Starbucks after their internship. I mean, they understand they need to pay their bills. There's some millennials that understand, and this applies to graduate students and kids that have taken out student loans, that they have to go move back home. It's not like they're giving up and living in mom's basement. Like, they're working full time, but they realize like they owe Citibank or whoever money. And so I think that this generation is an ambitious generation. I think that we have gotten smacked in the face with the economy. And so I think a lot of the articles that have come out in the last couple years are very unfair. But I have to say that I did work with millennials at a nationwide organization, and I met a lot of other millennials. Many nonprofit leaders are millennials. Maybe many startup company leaders are millennials. And I think that I don't know what these articles accomplish. And I think the reason just to talk about it on This Week in Cause is, just politically, socially, there's a lot of issues to tackle. And so I don't know why intergenerational conflict should be something that's coming up as a problem. Now, is it an issue in the workplace? I think it's always an issue when a younger generation comes in and there's a tension with the way they do things. And I think the internet might exacerbate that and technology might exacerbate that. But articles like this, I just think they're very old geezery, and
it's quite geezery.
The irony is that it's not an older person, and like everyone, a lot of people would say. I mean, he's a very smart individual. He was one of the, I think he was one of the guests, one of the commentators at TechCrunch Disrupt over the last few weeks. And obviously writes other pieces that I think are very well written. But I think that you ought to stick to your sector. And if you're a millennial, researcher, then like you might have, the research to back that up. But if not, then, I think time will tell. But I think that, even our guest later today, like she's a millennial, runs her own business. So.
And I'd just like to say something really quick to Paul Carr. You say we're all lazy. I am in this studio 1 hour every week, mister. And so to say that we're all lazy and immature, I have one thing to say to that. Okay.
Thank you, Jonathan.
That's like my Oberman special comment.
And now, to move into our next segment, which is Celebrities and Causes. Each week we highlight a celebrity and the causes that they are a part of. This week we have Tony Danza from, Who's the Boss Notoriety.
That's why you made that Who's the Boss joke at the beginning.
That is why I made the Who's the Boss joke at the beginning.
Awesome.
So I saw this A&E preview, and I thought it was a real scripted show. Apparently, it is a documentary, it is a reality show where Tony Danza is going into a school district and being a high school English teacher. He has a college degree. Obviously, we know his background as an actor. He's also been on Broadway as an actor, and he actually holds a degree in what I believe might actually be English. And
no, he was a teacher.
He was a teacher.
Before he was an actor, but he hasn't done it in several years, so that's why they're filtering him back in.
Well, let's cut to a clip just so Tony Danza and his students can speak for themselves.
Everybody gets nervous on their first day of school. I'm no different. It's hard being the new guy. Where I come from, I'm pretty popular, but that's not gonna help me here. I'm Mr. Danza. I'm your English teacher. Let's take attendance.
So Tony Danza no longer walking in on Angela in the shower on Who's the Boss, but now teaching inner city high school kids. What do you think about this?
Well, it's part we talked about waiting for Superman last week. Education. One, it's back to school, but it's also education is even bigger now than it usually is around this time of year. So this is another one of those reality shows that's attempting to delve into a social issue through entertainment. So we have Undercover Boss, which is trying to show how shitty it is to be an employee pretty much anywhere these days. So we have that. We've got a few other shows, and Teach Tony Danza. So now he's going into a school and he's learning how tough it is to be an educator. I'm not sure this one has as much of a message as Undercover Boss. The message here seems to be we really should respect teachers, we should pay them better, and here's what's wrong with our educational system, because it'll go into the trouble Tony Danza may be having in reaching these kids. It's a reality show, Dangerous Minds. And I'm sure it'll be entertaining. I think the first episode was last week.
Now, does he wear a leather jacket in this too, and is he also formerly from the military like Michelle Pfeiffer in Dangerous Minds?
I don't believe so, but it is among those, not Dangerous Minds, Coach Carter or Stand and Deliver or any of those Stand and Deliver type movies. We should do one, actually. We should just do a Stand and Deliver where it's you and I going and teaching a bunch of inner city kids.
I think that's probably a horrible idea.
No, it's a good idea, and so we'll contact someone after that. But yeah, no, I think this is a good idea for a show. I think it'll be entertaining because it's just kind of funny. You didn't think of Tony Danza as a teacher. They set it up in that trailer there as if it's, what's he going to be busting in on gangsters or something like that? I don't know. I think shows like this are a good thing. I think, obviously Tony Danza is looking for a job, but I think he could have done a lot worse. No, he could have done a lot worse, and it's better than if he was saying, like, Tony Danza is sponsoring, Clairol's, walk for the breast cancer cures or whatever every other company and celebrity is doing these days.
I mean, the show is mixed in with other reality shows, and so I think that, within the block of shows it's in, it's, exposing a different issue that maybe people wouldn't, normally have any sort of exposure to. And I think that, as you said, he was a teacher before, and I think it's interesting. I mean, he is a celebrity with a college degree, and so seeing him go into the schools, there might be issues or things that, even the people that are participating themselves didn't notice before. Well, that wraps up our headlines and our celebrities and causes segments.
And really quick, you can watch full episodes of this show after it airs at aetv.com, so you can check it out there if you like what we said about it. Sorry.
No problem. So moving on to our next segment, each week we feature an interview with a social entrepreneur or someone in the cause space who is making a difference and trying to trailblaze. This week we will feature an interview with Arabella Santiago, a former journalist and entrepreneur who is the proprietor of Just Good TV. So if we can bring up her website really quickly.
And we also have a clip of this. It's just a clip of a brief interview with her so you can get a sense of what Just Good TV is all about. Take a look real quick.
Hi everyone, we're here with Neil Bush and Clifford the Big Red Dog. Neil, tell us about Points of Light.
The Points of Light Institute in our hands-on network inspires, equips, and mobilizes citizens to take action in their communities, to change their communities in a positive way. And we get to work with wonderful characters like Clifford here to help inspire kids to be big, to work, to learn and be educated. But we have networks including faith networks, youth networks, volunteer center networks, corporate networks. We've generated 30 million hours of volunteer service just last year alone, over $600 million worth of value. So we're inspiring and equipping and mobilizing citizens.
All right, so there's a quick clip from JustGood.tv, and I'd like to welcome our guest, Arabella Santiago. Arabella, how are you?
Hi, how are you guys?
Good.
Good, thank you. So why don't you give us the quick, skinny, what's Just Good TV all about?
So JustGood.tv, we help nonprofits, social entrepreneurs, and social enterprises spread the word about what they do. And we do that through live webcasts and also interviews and original programming as well.
And Arabella, what got you into this space? Like, what piqued your interest in nonprofits and causes?
Well, I started a video blog called Business Boomer in 2007, and it was just about businesses and entrepreneurship, and then it quickly evolved into business with social impact. And ever since then, I started covering conferences like the Social Capital Markets Conference that we just covered last week. And we found that other nonprofits, and well, we're not a nonprofit, but nonprofits, social enterprises, and social entrepreneurs themselves needed to do that to also spread their stories. So we went from just covering stories about these social entrepreneurs to actually helping social entrepreneurs and nonprofits, through the use of this technology.
And can you tell us about some of the things that you covered? I know that you've covered MLK Service Day, and I know that you've been across the country covering things for Do Something and other organizations. So can you tell us a little bit about what you've covered and what impact you think your network has?
Okay, so we've covered a variety of other things like the Drucker Centennial down in Los Angeles, and then also the Sex Tech Conference here in San Francisco, which is a very niche conference, and it focuses on sexual education and health of young people through the use of technology. And so in terms of impact, I really believe that it's great to be able to harness the power of these technologies and platforms that we use, and use them so that they can help, spread the word about what's happening in this social good space. And in terms of reach, we really look to partner up with other media organizations. And thank you so much for having us here on this weekend, because it's all about collaboration and really working hard to get these stories and these people and these groups in the forefront of the mass audience and the mass media.
So what sort of topics would you like to cover that you haven't yet? Are there certain aspects or certain aspects of social entrepreneurship or causes that you really want to get to?
Yes, I actually would like to get more global type of stories and get involved with that, and also perhaps tackling these stories on in a way that's very informative and also interesting to somebody that might not know anything about the social impact, social good space. I think, you guys and I and our colleagues and friends, we know about the social innovation and social impact that goes on, in this space. But I think where it's lacking is a wider appeal. And I think that perhaps to find a nice balance between, being informative and also being interesting to people that may not know anything about this space.
Speaking of being informative, I know that the last 2 years you have participated in the SoCap conference. For those of you that are not aware, the SoCap conference is an annual convening in San Francisco where thought leaders come together and talk about social innovation. And one of the themes is often social entrepreneurship. You were just there last week, so maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the conference and maybe share with us some of the insights you gained from your interviews.
Yes, it was really amazing to see the conference grow. This is their third annual conference, and it was also held at the Fort Mason Center here in San Francisco, and it was convened by Kevin Jones. He's been really spearheading the effort towards this for this community, and what we saw was a lot of really great social enterprises, both at the startup level and also, a little bit more evolved in their efforts and in their missions, such as Kiva.org. And Matt Flannery was one of the keynote speakers, and Jacqueline Novogratz, founder of the Acumen Fund, also sat down with us at what we call the Dynamic Dialogue Lounge, which enabled viewers who couldn't be, or participants who couldn't be at the conference, to really interact with our guests and the conference VIPs and speakers. And it was really, really inspiring to also see some of the stories grow and some of the organizations talk about how they met an investor last year, and then now they've been funded, and then the next steps that they're looking to really grow their organizations and the social enterprise movement.
I want to ask you about what we were just talking about a few minutes ago. I don't know if you were listening to our conversation about millennials and how they've been disparaged recently. Do you want to chime in on that? Because we mentioned you briefly on there, and I caught a little flicker in your eye. Do you have something to add?
Yes, I mean, I work with a lot of millennials, and a lot of organizations that are run by millennials, if they're not founded by millennials, they're actually being run by millennials. So as Christina mentioned, DoSomething.org, and they've been a client since last year, and they are all in their 20s running this organization, and the CEO of DoSomething.org is Nancy Loveland, and she's in her 30s, and she calls herself the official old person, or the chief old person of the group. And I think it's really silly that these writers would say that. And I was born on September 21st, 1980, so I'm on the cusp of millennial, and I'm proud to be a millennial. I just think that they got to talk about something. And I was talking about the challenge of bringing this our content, what we cover, which is the social impact, social good space, and causes, and it's hard to bring this to really mass appeal, because sometimes it's not really what people want to watch. And I think that's also true with, maybe they just want to read about bad things about millennials, and because that's what people want to hear, and that's what they want to be fed. But I don't think it's true at all.
So, as a journalist, you've been chronicling the social entrepreneurship space and the social innovation space for several years now. Where do you think the field's going, and sort of what is your vision for Just Good TV in covering this space?
So I started off as an obituary clerk for the Home News Tribune right when I was at Rutgers University, and basically, I was really frustrated with the newspaper industry because I saw that they weren't innovating fast enough, and this was about 7 years ago. So I think that now, being in a space where it has to be socially innovative, all the things that we're seeing right now was less than 10 years old in this space of social enterprises and nonprofits. Well, at least like the cross-sector collaboration with nonprofits and corporations and government. I think that there's a lot more work to do. And the vision of JustGood.tv is to really help with the movement, and together, with great media companies like yours or This Weekend and other things, like, we can really make it a movement.
Now, if there are young people who are really inspired by what you're doing, love going on JustGood.tv, and want to participate, what do you want them to do?
Well, I would love for them to go ahead and contact me, Arabella at JustGood.tv, if they are in San Francisco and they want to stop on by at the Mission Social offices. And, we're always open to seeing whomever wants to participate. Maybe they have some great video that they've created that is relevant to this space. Just come on down. I'd love for people to let me know who to cover. We're really pushing out more of the original programming. I think that there's some great stories out there that need to be covered. And for example, we're about to launch a series on the Hayes Valley Farm, which is a local urban farm here in San Francisco. So if we can start connecting those stories with people out there, that'll be great. And if you like to come join me, just let me know.
Do you think there's a space for what you guys are doing in traditional media? A lot of individuals have gone to the web to try and produce original content. Will success happen when you can, get this segment onto, the CBS Evening News? Do you think there's a way for these two to come together?
Yes, and I think that it should be on a regular basis. And, with the advent of all the great platforms out there and also Apple TV, Google TV, I think that it will become easier for us to have a voice out there. But I also think that big media companies will start looking to partner up with organizations like ours who cover this beat. And also, I think Christina just mentioned MTV. I mean, they started a channel called MTV Public Affairs. I actually met Jason Zepka, the VP of Public Affairs, at the Sex Tech Conference in February. So, that's a really great place to start looking at maybe where it could happen.
Great, Arabella. Well, thank you for joining us. For those of you who might be interested in her website, it's justgood.tv. You can also follow the Just Good TV team at JustGoodTV on Twitter. Arabella, thank you for joining us, and we wish you good luck in your coverage of all things social innovation.
Thanks, Christina, and go Giants!
Go Braves! What? That was a plug. What?
You ladies and your sports feuds. Okay, we also want to take just a minute to talk about StormOnDemand.com. They're a great cloud hosting experience. They're 100% reliable. We use them for everything here at thisweekend.com. They can replace your dedicated server as well. So thank you very much, Christina, and thank all of you out there for watching. Be well and do good. We'll see you next week.